A hearty good afternoon to everybody that is in our student loan session for this afternoon. We are so glad that you are able to join us today on our first virtual open day. And the session will be regarding student loans, and I would like to just say very welcome to our presenter, Scott Rodgers from Study Loans for You. And I'm going to hand over to him now to kick us off on his presentation. Please be aware that there is a Q&A section to the right-hand side of your screen. So at any point in time when you do have any questions, please feel free to pop them in there so that we can answer all of your questions regarding finance assistance. Over to you, Scott.
Morning, everyone, and morning, Lizelle. Thank you very much for the introduction. So yeah, I'll go through the presentation, and then I'll go through the Q&A and ask any questions at the end. So I work for a company called Study Loans for You. We're a separate company from CTU, but we've partnered with CTU to assist their potential and current students to apply for student loans. All right, so who is Study Loans for You? Study Loans for You was established a year ago to address the growing need for student loan finance to fund education. We're a student loan originator, so what that means is that we assist students and their sponsors from start to finish of their loan application. Our team of consultants offer online and telephonic support and collect supporting documentation to make an application to the banks on your behalf. We then follow up with the banks and relay the results of your application back to you. All right, so traditionally, the student loan application process is very slow and fragmented. Banks are intimidating to deal with, they are slow to assist, and they aren't incentivized to give out student loans. And applicants often don't know how to apply and therefore feel overwhelmed and never end up completing the application. All right, and the reason why we're in business is to address the current rampant youth unemployment in South Africa by assisting students to apply for student loans so that they can upskill themselves and be better equipped to enter the job market. Since June of last year, we've originated in excess of 15 million rands in student loans and assisted over 250 students to obtain student loans. And we work with Standard Bank, ABSA, and Minati. So we're essentially the middleman that assists you with the process to make an application to the bank. All right, so the qualifying criteria in order to be able to pre-qualify for a student loan. The sponsor, which is the person responsible for the monthly repayments and responsible for the loan, that can be anyone. So that can be the student's mother, father, it can be an aunt or an uncle, anyone who is going to stand surety for the student loan. So the sponsor and the student must be South African and have a valid South African ID number. The sponsor must be permanently employed for at least 3 months, and that's because the banks require at least 3 months worth of bank statements. The sponsor must earn a minimum of 5,000 Rand net income per month. The sponsor cannot be under debt review. And of course, the sponsor must be able to have sufficient surplus to afford the monthly repayments of the loan. All right, so now the application process. How do you apply for a student loan through Study Loans for You? So when you create a profile and enroll on the CTU portal, you'll then come to this page. You'll see at the top right of the page, there's an Apply Now button. You click that, and that will take you to this landing page, which is a Study Loans for You and CTU co-branded landing page. And you need to then go down to the bottom where it says Step 1, Provide Consent. You then need to click I provide consent, that call to action button. And basically what you're doing by clicking that button is that you're giving Study Loans for You permission to do a credit assessment on you. So we do a quick credit check to see that everything's all right with your profile, And then you're also giving us consent to share your information with the banks, and then also to share your information back to CTU. So just go back. So once you've clicked on I provide consent, it will then take you to our online application form, where you'll then complete all your details. So it'll ask for the sponsors' details, the students' details, and we'll gather all that information, enough information to make an application to the bank. Also on the online portal, you'll be able to upload any supporting documentation. So some of the supporting documentation that we require to make an application to the bank: latest 3 months bank statement, your latest payslip, 2 ID documents, one for the student and one for the sponsor, the proof of tuition costs, your proof of residence, and the proof of registration or an acceptance letter, and your latest academic results. So if you don't have all these documents when you first make your application, that's completely fine. You can complete the application, and then your profile will then pull through to our system, where we've got a dedicated team of call center agents who will assist you going forward. So you'll be liaising with them directly, and you can send documentation through to them either on WhatsApp or email. Okay, now repayments. So as mentioned, we work with Standard Bank, ABSA, and Minati. So always our first point of call is to send your application to the bank, or to either Standard Bank or ABSA. So they typically have interest rates anywhere between 8 and 14%. And for us to send your information to the banks, the sponsor needs to have a clean credit history. So the banks have quite stringent rules and regulations, and you need to have a very good credit, a clean credit history in order to pre-qualify with them. So the nice thing about the banks is that the sponsor is only required to repay interest during the term of study. Okay, so for example, if the yearly tuition is 50,000 Rand, and this, for example, it's at 12% interest, the estimated monthly repayments are 660 Rand, and that's a complete that's an estimate. So it'll be somewhere in that ballpark, but depending on the risk profile of the sponsor, their interest rates can range from 8 to 14%. Okay, so always our first point of call is to go to the regular banks first, because it's cheaper for the monthly repayments are less for the sponsor. Right, and then if the sponsor either doesn't, well, if the sponsor doesn't qualify with the banks, no need to worry, because then we have another credit providing partner, a company by the name of Minati Alternate Student Funding, and they provide funding to second-tier qualifying sponsors. So these are sponsors who don't have a perfectly clean credit history. They might have 1 or 2 payments in arrears, but they have now settled, but it's not squeaky clean, which the banks require. So their interest rate, they also range between 8 and 14%, depending on the risk profile of the sponsor. So the more riskier you are, the higher interest rates. And for example, what the monthly repayments are with Minati, so the sponsor is required to repay interest and capital during the term of the study. So if using the same example, if the tuition is 50,000 Rand, it's 12% interest, the estimated monthly repayments will be about 2,500 Rand a month. And the reason for the difference between Minati and the regular banks is that the regular banks only require you to service interest during the course of the loan. And then once the student graduates, the loan will either be converted into the student's name, and the student will be responsible for the monthly repayments if and when they get a job, or the sponsor will be required to service interest and capital once the student's graduated. But with Minati, you're required to service interest and capital during the term of the loan. So for every year of study that you get a loan for, so for example, you're going into first year, and you're either going to start in June of this, or July of this year, or in February of the next year. You make an application for a loan at the start of the year, and if you're granted that loan with Minati, you are given 2 years to repay back that loan. So it still makes it a lot more affordable if you were to go on a monthly internal repayment plan with CTU. So with tuition of 50,000 Rand, I think you'll be looking at about 5,000 Rand per month over 10 months. But with Minati, you can spread that out over 24 months, and the monthly repayments are roughly cut in half. All right, so now that's the end of my presentation, and I'll open up the floor to any Q&A sessions or Q&A questions.
Thank you, Scott. We had a question where someone requested whether they can be their own sponsor if they are currently employed.
Yes, that's perfectly fine. So if you're permanently employed, you most probably be a part-time student or an online student, you can be your own sponsor. That's perfectly fine. So as long as you are permanently employed, earning more than 5,000 Rand net income, you can be your own sponsor.
Perfect. Scott, can I perhaps ask that we just move back to the slide that had the requirements of what is necessary for an application? We do have some
the supporting documents.
Yes. Thank you. So
yeah,
if
so
we can
latest 3 months bank statements, your latest pay slip, and two ID documents. One would be for the sponsor and the student, but if the sponsor is the student, then you'd only need one ID document. Proof of tuition costs, which I think you get on the online portal, CTU's online portal, your proof of residence, and then your proof of registration or acceptance letter, which you'll also get on the CTU portal, and your latest academic results.
Thank you. We are just, any other questions that we have from the floor, you're more than welcome to post them in the question and answer section so that we can post them through to Scott.
I'll maybe just hop in here as well. Good afternoon, everybody. Just kindly note that before you can apply for a student loan, you need to register as a student with CTU Training Solutions. In order to start the whole process of a student loan, one of the documents that is needed in the application process is your student registration letter. So that is the first point. To get your application started is you need to register. We will provide you with a student registration letter and you can proceed with your application.
Another question that we received, Scott, was from Joe, who is asking, do we have to have an account with a specific bank to apply for a loan with study loans for you?
Hi there, thanks for the question. So no, so you can have a bank account with any bank, but if you are a Standard Bank account holder, we will take you to Standard Bank first. If you're an Absa Bank account holder, we'll take you to Absa Bank first. But if you were to bank with Nedbank or FNB or Capitec, we'll send you to either. So you can bank with anyone, and the banks that we use will still fund you if you qualify.
I see another question that popped up is how long after you graduate until you start repaying your loan?
So the banks, so if you get a student loan with either Standard Bank or Absa Bank, the banks usually give you around about a 6-month time period in order for you to find a job, and then it's a case by case. So depending on how much the student is now earning and how long you would like to repay the loan over, the banks tailor a solution specifically for you.
We have had a request, if we could please go back to the requirements slide as well.
Okay. Is that the qualifying criteria?
Yes, please. We also had another question where someone asked, how do you apply online for this study loan? I think it was perhaps some of our late joiners that maybe missed that section. So perhaps, Scott, you'd like to go through the qualifying criteria again, and then also the online application process.
Okay, sure thing. So in order to pre-qualify, in order to make an application through Study Loans for You, so the sponsor and student must both be South African and have valid SA ID numbers. The sponsor must be permanently employed for at least 3 months, because the banks required 3 months bank statements. The sponsor must earn a minimum of 5,000 Rand net income per month. The sponsor cannot be under debt review, and the sponsor must have sufficient surplus to be able to afford the monthly repayments. And how to apply for a student loan through Study Loans for You. So once you have created your profile and enrolled on the CTU portal, you'll come to this page and you'll see at the top right corner there it says, would you like to apply for a student loan? You need to click that call to action button saying apply now. That will then take you to Study Loans for You and CTU landing page. And this you'll see in the yellow block at the bottom, it says step 1 is to provide consent. You then move across and you'll click the I provide my consent button, which is circled in blue. And by giving Study Loans for You consent, what you are saying is that you give Study Loans for You permission to do a quick credit assessment on you. And you also give us permission to share your information to the banks. So obviously the banks can then process your application and then come back with the results. And then you also give Study Loans for You permission to then let CTU know if you've been given the green light or if you've been declined.
Thank you. So we have another question from Joe, who is asking, how long does it normally take to receive feedback from either Study Loans for You or the bank regarding their application?
So it's very quick. So if you provide us all the information up front, then we can make an application to the bank on the same day. Standard Bank gets back to us on the day. ABSA gets back to us probably 2 days, and then Minati would be 3 days later. So often we find what is the stalling process, the hurdle in the process is that an applicant might only half complete their application form and then not attach any supporting documentation, or they might start the application and not have their parents enough of their parents' details, and then when we try call them later that day, we can't get hold of them. So if we are given all the information up front, we can then the process is very quick. But just to note is that the banks will only pay out your student loan if you have passed your previous year of academics and qualified to enroll with CTU or roll over to the next year. So for example, if you are in matric now and you are looking at going to CTU and registering for February 2021, the banks won't pay out your student loan now because you haven't passed matric, if a matric pass is what is required for what you want to study at CTU. So you first need to pass matric, get your results. We will then give that results to the banks, and then they will pay out on receipt of you passing the previous year. You can still send us the information now. So it's May. You can still send us through the information now. The banks will process it now. They'll then give you a yay or nay if they will fund you or not. But they almost pre-approve you. So then they'll say, okay, Mr. Jones, how things stand, we will fund you next year, but just don't let your credit score drop. So basically don't take on any more additional debt, because if you take on any additional debt, then that means that your monthly repayments, in your monthly debit orders might increase. So your disposable income for a student loan at the end of the month might reduce. So just keep things as they are. Don't, go over your spending. Don't take on any more debt. So just keep things as they are. And if that is the case, then we will fund you. We'll have to redo. We'll do another credit check on you once matric results have come out. But don't. The big thing is don't take on any more debt. That really is the big thing.
Thank you, Scott. I think you answered Joe's question there with that you can apply already now. You don't have to wait until the end of the year. So I think that was a quite comprehensive answer to that question as well. And then we had a question once again, Osan, where someone asked whether their parents have to be part of specifically ABSA or Standard Bank to apply for the loan. And I also think that links to a previous question that we had, which was similar to that, which Scott already answered and indicated that it's that you don't have to be part of a specific bank to specifically apply for the student study loans.
Yes, that's good. That's right. And if you are looking at enrolling in mid-year now, so that would be a couple of weeks or a month or two away. Yeah, please send through your applications, and if you've passed your most recent academic year, so most of the applications, I assume, applicants will have just completed matric at the end of last year, possibly. But if so then send through that information, and because you qualify with CTU, then the banks will pay out the loan.
Thank you. I'm just quickly looking through if there are any of the questions that we have missed. To our audience, please feel free to send us through any questions that you do have.
I will maybe just hop in here and to maybe just announce to everybody joining that if you do register with CTU and you apply for your student loan, on your first approval, if the bank or you go to the student loan process and you submit all your documentation, and on the first application, the bank declines your student loan, CTU will refund your registration fee. But that is only on the first application that you do in the application process for a student loan. So if you feel that you don't want to apply because there might be a problem, or that you won't get your registration money back if you don't qualify for a student loan, rest assured that if you do register with CTU, you apply for a student loan, and on the first feedback from the bank, you get you are declined or whatever the case there might be, CTU will refund your registration fees.
We also had a question where someone was asking about the fees involved, about the repayment for the study loans. Scott, if you could maybe just skip ahead again to one of the slides where you indicated just a general repayment. Yes.
Okay,
perfect.
sure. So I'll go over this again. So it's always our first point of call is to go to the regular banks first, okay? And that's our two regular banks that we work with, our Standard Bank and ABSA. So typically their interest rates vary from 8 to 14%, depending on the risk profile of the sponsor. So if they see that the sponsor is a higher risk, they will then increase the interest rate, and they do that by doing a credit assessment on the sponsor. So the sponsor must also have a clean credit history. So the banks have very stringent rules and regulations. So as I mentioned earlier, the sponsor can't be under debt review. They can't have lots of payments in arrears. They mustn't have missed a lot of payments in the last 6 to 12 months. So the banks will do a full credit analysis on the sponsor. And so the great thing about Standard Bank and ABSA is that the sponsor is only required to repay interest during the term of study. Okay. So let's just say, for example, the tuition is 50,000 Rand. You're looking at 50,000 Rand at 12% interest. You're looking at an estimated monthly repayment of 660 Rand, and this is interest only. So now, as mentioned, Minati is our second, they take on second tier qualifying students, or sponsors, should I say. So if the sponsor doesn't qualify with the regular banks, we then send their application to Minati. They have similar interest rates to the regular banks, between 8 and 14%, and the sponsor is required to repay interest and capital during the term of study. So that's one of them. That's the major difference between Minati and the regular banks. So using the same example of a tuition of 50,000 Rand and 12% interest, you're looking at estimated monthly repayments of 2,500 Rand. And to put in to compare against what you would be paying with CTU, so the 50,000 Rand, you'd be on an internal repayment plan with CTU over 10 months. You're looking at about 5,000 Rand a month. And you see, if you were to be granted a loan with Minati, the monthly repayments are almost, well, more than cut in half. So you'll be paying roughly 2,500 Rand over 2 years for that year of tuition. So once you're, for example, if you're studying a 3-year degree or a 3-year diploma, you would apply for a loan on your first year, and if you granted it, then you would be, and if you need funding for your second year, before your second year starts, you would apply for a second loan through Study Loans for You. So if you're studying a 3-year course, you wouldn't apply for all 3 years of funding upfront. You need to apply year by year, and we will assist you in that process too.
Another question that we had, Scott, was based on this, where you are applying for a loan year on year on year. What would be your duration afterwards, after you've completed your studies? Obviously, depending on whether you are receiving your loan through ABSA or Standard Bank, or then Minati or so on, where you pay the capital only back afterwards. How long would that duration be that you are in actual fact paying back that capital, should you have received a loan through Standard Bank or through ABSA?
All right, so Minati is very straightforward. So for every loan that you receive, you have to pay that loan off over 2 years. So if you study a 3-year degree, you have to pay off. You've got 6 years essentially to pay off those 3 years. Now with the regular banks, they tailor a solution for you, so it's entirely up to you. So they will look at how much you're earning. They'll take into account your credit score, and then they will work with you to come up with a affordable monthly repayment, so you can repay that loan. So I can't give you a specific answer for the banks, because it's on a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thank you. We also have a question where someone said, should you have completed your studies and perhaps also, and you struggle to find employment, let's say within the first 6 months after you've completed your studies, is there an arrangement or leniency in terms of the bank of how this capital can be repaid, or is it something that needs to start repayment immediately after you have completed your studies?
So if you don't find a job, your parents are responsible for it. So what usually the case is that if a student were to with their first job, then they would start repaying back the loan. But if the parents don't want to put that burden on the child, or make the child repay, they can stand surety for those payments and be responsible for those repayments.
Okay, perfect. Someone is, we've got Anonymous asking a question saying that if perhaps they completed courses at another institution, didn't finish their studies or so and had no loans or bursaries previously taken, and they now want to apply for a study loan and study with CTU, will having basically, dropping out of a previous qualification, affect their loan application? Or is it purely because it is based on finance that they are screened on?
Yeah, it's on affordability. So they will give you if you qualify with CTU and CTU will register you and enroll you, then the banks will look at funding you also.
Thank you for that, Scott. Just quickly, we have once again someone asking, how do they apply for the study loan? So if we can perhaps click back to the slide again that we had for the online application on our CTU page. Right, so once you have gone through the application process for the particular program that you are interested to complete with CTU Training Solutions, and you have been approved, you will see there at the top right-hand corner, there is the Apply Now button, and you can apply there to get the process on the go for your study loan application. We also had a couple of people that asked whether CTU supports NSFAS funding. NSFAS is only for government institutions, so the answer to that would be unfortunately not. And I just want to make sure whether we had someone ask which loan you would be referring me to, but I think that's a little bit vague in terms of the question. It is obviously, as Scott indicated previously in our session, first call of court would be to apply through ABSA or Standard Bank, and then last point of call would be to work through Minati, depending on obviously the criteria of our applicants.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. I just want to make sure. We have a couple of questions whether CTU applies bursaries. Yolandi, if I can throw that over to you. We don't particularly have any bursaries available at the moment.
Yes, thank you. With regards to the bursaries, CTU do not have bursaries as such that is available, but you are more than welcome as a student to see if there is any company that would be willing to assist you with the bursary. When you do get somebody that will assist you with the bursary, we can assist with the process going forward. From time to time, we do get companies asking us for students, where a company will actually assist us with a bursary. And then during that process, we will always post that online. We will ensure to inform our registered students so they can apply for a bursary opportunity should they arrive. But currently at CTU, there is at the moment no bursaries available. There's another one that I just saw for marketers. Where do you find hardware requirements? You are more than welcome to visit our page for per campus, your nearest campus. Open the page on the campus page, and you will see all the marketers listed. You are more than welcome to speak to any one of them to assist you with hardware requirements. I'm not sure if there's anything else, Lizelle, that I missed.
We have a question where someone asked, is it possible to still get a loan if you did not do so well in your year of education and learning? I think this ties back to what Scott indicated, that the matriculation results or the pass results from the previous academic year is a requirement. So if you're saying did not do so well, if the year was passed, then it is a situation of where the loans are looked at from a perspective of affordability. So as long as your academic year was completed successfully, then it obviously goes over to a financial affordability perspective. Am I correct in saying that, Scott?
Yes, so you'll need to have passed the previous year in order to receive an acceptance letter from CTU. So the banks require that letter. So as long as you've done enough to qualify for the course with CTU, then the banks will consider you.
That's on our side. Looks like we have answered all of the questions that have come through to us in the session. The session will be available on the website as well, so that everybody is sure to follow the process that is required in order to apply for a loan, and the sales consultant is also able to guide you through this process in the individual chat rooms. So please be sure to also reach out to them should you have any questions. Thank you so much for your time, Scott, and for guiding us through the process and for answering all of the questions here. And to everybody in the chat room, thank you so much for joining us today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.